Hello, everybody. A little tip for you guys and gals out there that are looking into maybe doing the YouTubes. Make sure all your elements are working. I made sure my video was working, but I didn't check to see if the audio was working. So, this is take two of my video. Now, about a month ago, a little over a month ago, I did a halfway point video where I talked about being halfway through the books of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and as I posted about it on Reddit, and as they told me, and as I was doing research for my video, I found out, there are like a ton of other Malazan books by another writer and also by Erikson himself. So saying I'm halfway through is kind of a misnomer. I'm probably barely scratched the surface of everything that's out there that can be read. But for the 10 book epic series that Erikson started with, I was a bit more than halfway through. I was on book 6, which is the Bone Hunters. But and so in that video, I did kind of a spoiler-free video, maybe with very minor spoilers. If you didn't want to know anything at all about the series before you start reading it, it was more of a kind of an overview of what to kind of expect. How Erikson's writing is kind of how I took Erikson's writing, and just kind of my thoughts and opinions on things. So this one, I'm going to be talking about Reaper's Gale and a little bit about Midnight Tides, because the books are kind of tied together. And if I'm going to talk about Reaper's Gale, I should probably tell a little bit about Midnight Tides. But yeah, so I was reading along. Each book is kind of its own beast. One of the things I love about Steven Erikson and anybody that I talk to, which I try to talk to as many people as I can to try to talk them into reading the series. But one of the things I always point out is each of the books tells its own story. It is a big, epic 10-book series, and there are plot details and kind of plot points that are kind of left hanging so that they can be picked up in later books. But there is a clear beginning, ending, and end to middle and into a book. That so that by the time you get done with the book, there's like this feeling of satisfaction of reading a full story, instead of getting to the end and there being the big "to be continued" kind of slogan, and nothing's really resolved, and you just kind of have to slog on to the next book, and hopefully by the end of the whole thing, whole series, there's a satisfying ending. There are satisfying endings within each of the books. There are characters, plots, arcs that are resolved. But yeah, there's this sort of a satisfying feeling by the end of the book that you've read a complete book. However, you want to know more about these characters and what more things that they're going to get up to, so you continue to read. So that's how I felt going through these books. But then when we get to Midnight Tides, I was kind of put off a little bit because there's a bit in the front of the books that kind of goes over all of the characters. He calls it the dramatis persona, and it just kind of lists all the characters and who they are in the front of the book. And when I was reading over Midnight Tides, I only saw one name that I recognized from the previous book, and a whole slew of characters I had never heard of before. And in fact, this kind of takes place in a continent completely different from where we had been reading. A whole new set of people, the whole different empire, along with the native tribes that kind of surround it, and it I was not prepared for that, and then so I was kind of put off by it. But I quickly fell in love with the characters, and this quickly became one of my favorite books in the series. And I really enjoyed the clash. There's one of the things that is great about his books is that you're reading these two forces that are going up against each other, and you may be, depending on your personality, kind of lean one way or the other. There's this empire, the theorists that are this empire that's built on capitalism, and you could the whole kind of bureaucratic nature of it is kind of corrupt, and has these evil people within it. But then the king of it, he's sort of kind of benevolent. He's sort of a likable guy. so and then within this empire, you have all these fascinating characters that you either love or hate, or but you're really taken with this kind of empire. And then you have this native tribe that these tribes of Test Edor that kind of come together, and you kind of rally against them because they have more of a kind of a primitive kind of a primitive society, with maybe a little bit more virtuous in a sense, but they're led by Rulad Singar, who has been corrupted by this sword that was forged for this crippled god, this diseased god, that may have this malevolent intention, maybe, but he's corrupted, and he's a very fascinating character, a kind of a tragic character, but he's doing these evil things so that these two sides, but he has all these different supporting characters around him that are more virtuous, and you can kind of liken together. So you have these two warring factions, that you have people that you love and hate on both sides, that are warring against each other. So there's not a clear sense of good and evil. You're kind of sitting there, chewing your popcorn, not knowing who to root for overall, because it's very very interesting dynamic there of not having a clear side that you're ruling for. You're just kind of interested in how all of it's gonna play out, and can you really have this corrupted evil person rule this empire? Is that the best thing for the outcome, really? And so it's kind of fascinating, and the tragic nature of all of it is very fascinating to me. Yeah, so I really enjoyed that, and of all his books, I think this one kind of likens a lot to what George R.R. Martin does with his kind of political intrigue in this fantasy setting. It gets kind of more into the courtly drama of things, and obviously George R.R. Martin's one of the biggest names in fantasy, along with J.R.R. Tolkien. So you can't really start talking about a fantasy series without either comparing or contrasting with the big guys. So there's my name drop for the thing I had to do there. But yeah, so I really enjoyed the book. Really enjoyed it. And then I went on to the Bone Hunters, and I liked it, but not as much as Midnight Tide. So when I found out Reaper's Gale, towards the end of Bone Hunters, it kind of leads you to what Reaper's Gale is going to be, and it's going to be the return to that empire that I love, into a lot of the characters that I love from that original book. And so I was very pumped to get back to them, to the tortured king that is covered in the gold coins and can't let go of that sword. And at this point, he's looking for a champion that will defeat him. He's now the ruler of 1,000 deaths. He's died hundreds of times, and he keeps coming back for more. And yeah, so, and again, this is a spoiler-filled story. I'll put that on on the tag here, so you'll know it's spoiler filled. But yeah, it's and also this isn't really a review at this point. If you're 6 books in, you're not looking for a review of whether or not you want to read this book. At this point, you know whether you're noping out of the series or you're stuck with it to the end at this point. So this is really my reactions to the book. So obviously they have to have spoilers in it. But yeah, so yeah, you've got the Roulette. He's even more tortured now. He's kind of grieving with his position, but he's like a runaway train. He's on that crash course. He doesn't know how to divert, and he's surrounding himself with all these corrupt influences. His main influence is this chancellor from the old empire that is only out for his own benefit and his own riches, and he's on a downward spiral, and the book is kind of um, building up to this almost wrestling event, this big thing where he's got these new champions that he's challenging, and Ikram, this huge force that could destroy empires that have been talked about for books, is going to meet with Roulette, and there's going to be this huge battle between the two of them towards the end of the book. It's all been pumped up like a wrestling event, and then you also have Karsa Orlong, sort of a mix between the Hulk and Conan. He's this primitive, gigantic guy. He's also is in contention with of being a champion, and who's going to fight who's going to destroy who. There's that tension, and this whole book the whole time is kind of building towards that big showdown at the end. And in Erikson's perfect form, things don't play out quite like you expect. And that's one of the things I love about Erikson's books is he has a tendency to kind of, he's like, okay, well, and also his characters in most fantasy books, they have a fate. There's you're fated to have the sword. You're fated to do this. You're fated to defeat the big bad of the land. And there's so many times, and it starts with the first book, where the Crocus or Cutter, he's kind of a plaything for the gods of luck, and he has this fate and this path that he's supposed to go down, and by the end of the book, this coin that he's given by the gods, he just tosses it into the water, and it's sort of like, I'm going to live my own life. And so the whole thing is these gods are trying to manipulate the humans and into doing their bidding, and the humans are always getting up to trouble and doing their own thing. And also Steven Erikson as the author is taking a lot of times the tropes of fantasy. You have to do this, this, and this in a fantasy, and he's saying no, nope, nope. I'm gonna do this my own way, and I really enjoy his books in that sense that he goes on his own way of things, and I really enjoy that. For the longest time when I first started reading fantasy, I enjoyed it, but I kind of got tired of the tropes that I was seeing. I knew how most fantasies are going to play out, and if at that point, the journey has to be interesting. And I was finding all these books that were I already kind of knew how they were going, and they weren't, interesting enough to grip me. So that's why at that point I kind of switched over to reading horror novels, because you really had no idea by the end of the book, who was going to survive. That no one was on this big quest. There was this big bad that could destroy everybody, and I really got into like splatterpunk for a while, where absolutely no one was safe in those books. And my favorite author for that was Clive Barker, and he had this thing where where the hero and the monster, he was fascinated by the inverse in each of them, and instead of seeing things in black and white, he liked to see things in shades of gray. And Steven Erikson books, there's very much that sense as well. There's not like a totally good person. There are, but they're rare in between, far in between. These pillars of the great good and the great evil. Most of Steven Erikson's characters, there's like a sense in shades of gray to them, in that, and even in the darkest and even the nicest people, there's sort of the adverse within them, that makes them fascinating, and makes you want to go back to these characters and read more about them. Like one of the people that you really kind of lean towards in this series is Saren Pidak. She's almost so she's mostly the observer of these warring. They're in. I love that there's like the traditional sort of band of ruffians that from all sorts of life kind of pulled together for this common goal, but everybody's in it for themselves, and it doesn't play out like a normal fantasy. By the end, by the time that they get to the place where they're questing for, things go very badly for most of them, in that scenario. But for the most part, Saren Pidak, and almost for the whole part of the quest, she's sort of the observer and sort of our eyes to what's going on. But even her, there's a moment of her weakness where she shows kind of her dark side and kind of invades someone else's their mind, because she could kind of tap into people's dreams, and she kind of invaded someone else's and kind of violated his space, and so even the people that we see as good can have a bit of darkness with them, and even the people that are bad, like Rulad Singar, he's a bad guy. For the most part, he's he's got really bad motivations, and he does very bad things to people. But there's sort of a tragic nature. He knows what he's done bad, and he wants to do good, but he's so paranoid and so within himself, he can't find a way out of himself, and he's surrounded himself with these corrupted influences that won't let him rise to the occasion. So there's this whole tragic nature to a lot of the characters, and it builds, like I said, there's like this the big champion, but then you have the invading outside forces, which are the bridge burners slash the bone hunters, that have been wronged against by the Test Edor, and they're coming in to this land thinking that they'll be liberating the Empire from this evil influence that have kind of conquered the Empire, but they they find out that things are a little bit more complicated than they think, and so they're on a tragic run, vastly outnumbered, and you're wondering, oh my gosh, are they going to be find their end as well, as well as you have Red Mask and him building up his own tribes to go against the Test Edor, and you're thinking, well, are the Bridge Burners and Red Mask, are they going to get together? Because Tok the Younger is one of used to be with the Bridge Burners. That would be a great reunion if they get together. But then again, Steven Erikson bucks against what would normally happen in a story, and culminates, instead of them meeting together, them having separate battles, that one ends kind of bittersweet but triumphant, and the other bittersweet but tragic. And it's interesting that becomes the climax in what kind of settles the story, and then the big confrontation that happens. Turns out it's Rulad and Karsa that have the final duel, and it plays out kind of the way I thought it would. And it wasn't a huge surprise to me how it played out. It's kind of like how it should play out, and so it could have been a letdown, that part of the story, but those two battles were so powerful and so impactful that it just kind of, that was the emotional pivot that you wanted, that satisfying thing, so that that the battle with the final showdown that you thought you wanted just became like a little bit of a cherry on top of things. But yeah, there's so many things that I could go into on this book. But yeah, it's very very good. I love Tool, Beedick, and Bug and their economic takedown of the Empire, and how at the end of Midnight Tides you found out Bug was this this god, and how Bug was Tool's manservant, and how the relationship after that revelation at the end of the other book, how that relationship sort of kind of came back together, the same as it ever was, and there's like this comedic uh, um, nature between the two, this relationship that you really enjoyed, and I like how it plays out in this, and almost I kind of kept toying with the idea, that most of their time is spent in this little hovel of a house that's one room, and then Tool's bed up above. I was almost thinking you could take like the scenes in that place from Midnight Tides and Reaper's Gale, and almost do like a play, a play within a play that takes place in just that building, and it's all those scenes with Tool and Bug. But I don't know if it would put together as a satisfying play. But and maybe you just take those two characters and create a whole nother story, maybe a time before what takes place in these books, of their relationship. There's such an interesting and fun relationship between the two, that I would like to see more stories. A prequel, a prequel play with them would be almost sort of a something that I would love to see, but that probably would never happen. But yeah, that's something I kind of toy with. A couple other thoughts about this: Serendipity and Troll Singar. It's that love story that wasn't a love story, that is a love story that takes place over the course of these three books, and you get the bittersweet ending to that. As a side note, I'm also playing Baldur's Gate as Starfield at the same time as I was reading these books, and so in Starfield I made my main character, the character I created as Saren Pedek. I created her as the space pilot in that. In Baldur's Gate, I created Troll Singar as my main guy in that. So they're living their separate lives in my video games. Despite what happens in Reaper's Gale, they live on in my games. But yeah, and also I've gotten in the habit of, as I read the books, I sit down and I start reading. I put on some black metal on YouTube and kind of rock out. Not too loud to be distracting, but loud enough to hear as I read, and that's sort of like the perfect soundtrack for me for these books for some reason. The whole dark and somber kind of sound of that music just really plays well with what I'm reading. I know some people can't listen to anything while they read; they need complete silence. But those of you guys that out there that like to listen to music as you read, what's your personal soundtrack for these books? Maybe throw in a comment down below. And yeah, I used to be even worse. I would put music on. I would be reading, and I'd throw the TV on something random so I could watch something as I was reading. I was totally ADD, ADHD back then. So, but yeah, I think that kind of covers it. There's, like I said, there's a whole bunch of other stuff I could go over. There's so many characters in this. Maybe I'll touch upon them in future future videos. Hopefully, I've started Toll the Hound, and I'm really digging that we're back in the city that started it all. And Gardens of the Moon, we're back in Durgistan, or however you say that. Again, I pronounce everything very badly, so sorry about that. My apologies. Correct me in the comments down below. But yeah, I just to tell you my little adventure with Told the Hound getting the book. My tradition is to order it on Amazon when I'm halfway through the book I'm reading. So halfway through Reaper's Gale, I ordered Told the Hounds. And the weird thing is, on this blog, they've got all the books in order except Reaper's Gale, and then Told the Hounds should be next, but they have Dust of Dreams. I know there's like fans have did their own reading order for books. I don't know if this is a fan's guide or if it's just got mixed up. But yeah, so halfway through Reaper's Gale, I ordered Told the Hounds for Amazon, and when I got it from Amazon, I have to say, oop, nope, that's my OBS. I wasn't very happy with it because there's two sections of the book where you could see where a section of the pages were printed and kind of lowered down so that there's so the page was actually lower on the book, so like the bottom half of the page is cut off, so there's like a line or a couple of lines of each page that are cut off. So I called Amazon and talked to someone overseas that had English wasn't their first language. No disrespect to them. They were trying to understand what was going on. We finally settled on it was missing pages. I guess it was missing part of the pages. But she said, hey, you have two options. We could replace the book, which I kind of wanted to do. I wanted them to send out a new book, but she said I would have to send back the old one. But I could get a refund and then and then not send back the book. So I was like, okay, just give me a refund. In fact, I was thinking, well, maybe they have a bad batch of this book. So who's to say if I got a replacement that wouldn't have been like that as well. So I went over to Barnes and Nobles. And, the guy that checked that rang me up was a little interesting. He looked like a discount Satanist. He had the long, lanky, unwashed long black hair with a pencil-thin mustache. Interesting looking guy with sort of dark circles under his eyes. Very, very interesting guy. The only thing he said to the book was, it has like a kind of a hound on the front there. He goes, kind of looks like the Hellhounds from Chronicles of Riddick. And I said, yeah, sure. So I quickly got my book and left. So yeah, I got the pages intact. I'm getting ready to read it. I'm about 70 pages in. Really enjoying it so far. So I will maybe do a follow-up video for the remaining rest of the books. And I'm trying to talk to Mike into reading it. He's my co-host for the First, the Last, the Nerdum. This is our page here. So far we have 61 subscribers. We love all of you. As I record this is on Sunday, and we're premiering Flash Gordon. I think I'll put this out on Wednesday. But our channel, we love to talk about movies, we talk about comic books, we talk about books. Everything under the nerd rainbow we like to touch upon. And, if you have any suggestions, more the merrier. Yeah, we talked about Flash Gordon. Last week, talked about They Live. The previous week, we did Takashi Miike's Terraformars movie, which is based off the manga and the anime. But yeah, we talk about all sorts of things, to probably the detriment of our channel, because, YouTube likes the same, so, that's why you see, like, if a channel talks about movies, they kind of focus in on one genre. It kind of inspires people to come back for more. So we're kind of challenging ourselves by talking about everything that we like, but we're kind of doing this for ourselves. So we like to talk about the stuff that we like. So yeah, that's why we're kind of a mixed bag of things. And this is my personal Twitter channel, or X as we like to say. The First Less Nerdum. I usually just talk about the stuff we're covering on our podcast, and little things related to it. I also like to play around with Bing image generator. That's how I came up with the image of ourselves here. But that's completely generated, AI generated, and for some reason it was able to come out with our likenesses pretty well. And also on my halfway to Malazan, that's completely AI generated thumbnail, except for the text that I did. I tried to do a AI generation image for Reaper's Gale, but a gray skinned guy with gold coins on him, with long black hair and a sword on a throne. With that description, it really had an issue with. It, it would get like a sort of a metal looking guy with long black hair with gray skin, but then the gold coins would be like splashed in his lap and stuff. I probably should have kept some of those images to show you, but yeah, they were kind of entertaining. So yeah, if you could get a AI generated roulette Singar going, let us know. But yeah, I think I'll wrap it up here. I'm really enjoying the series. If you have any thoughts on anything, just leave it in our comments. I read them all. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.